The engine died. Anger boiled over. As if her ex's betrayal wasn't enough, now she was alone in the dark with no signal and no way out. Then a luxury car pulled over, and the man who stepped out was the last one she wanted to see. Or maybe the only one she needed. The city lights blurred through her tears as Emma Harrison gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white against the leather. 30 years old, and she felt like a complete fool. 6 months. She had given Marcus 6 months of her life, 6 months of trust, of late-night conversations and Sunday morning breakfasts, of believing that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found someone who wouldn't let her down. The image burned in her mind, Marcus and that woman at the restaurant downtown, his hand caressing her cheek the same way he had touched Emma's face just that morning. The same gentle gesture she had thought was meant only for her. When their eyes met across the dining room, he hadn't even had the decency to look ashamed, just surprised, inconvenienced. Emma had walked out without a word, her heels clicking against the marble floor with a finality that echoed in her chest. She didn't scream, didn't cause a scene. She simply left, drove away, and kept driving until the cityscape gave way to quieter streets where the streetlights stood farther apart and the shadows grew longer. Now 2 hours later, her phone buzzed incessantly with his calls and messages. She ignored every single one. The anger was a living thing inside her, hot and sharp, mixing with humiliation until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. How had she been so blind? How had she missed the signs? Her brother would say he told her so. Daniel had never liked Marcus, had warned her that the man seemed too smooth, too practiced in his charm. But Emma had defended him, had believed in him, had... The car shuddered beneath her. "No," she whispered, pressing the gas pedal. Nothing. No, 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 not now. The engine made a pitiful wheezing sound before dying completely. Emma managed to coast to the side of the deserted street, the vehicle rolling to a stop beneath a broken streetlight. Of course. So of course this would happen tonight, on this particular stretch of road where nothing but warehouses and closed businesses lined the empty sidewalks. She grabbed her phone. 2% battery. Perfect. Just perfect. If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion. Emma tried calling her brother first, but the call went straight to voicemail. He was probably in one of his endless business meetings, the kind that stretched into the evening and made him unreachable for hours. She tried her best friend next, but Rachel's phone rang and rang without answer. The battery died as she was pulling up a rideshare app. Emma let her head fall back against the headrest, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. This day couldn't possibly get worse. She was stranded on a dark street, alone with a dead phone and a dead car, after discovering the man she had been dating was a cheating bastard. The sound of an approaching engine made her stiffen. She watched through her rearview mirror as headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter. The car slowed as it neared, and Emma's heart began to pound. She reached for her pepper spray in the glove compartment, her hand trembling slightly. The vehicle pulled up behind her, a sleek black luxury sedan that probably cost more than she made in a year. The headlights went dark, but the streetlight half a block away provided just enough illumination for her to see the driver's door open. A man stepped out, and Emma's breath caught. No, anyone but him. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that seemed to fill his perfectly tailored suit jacket. Even from this distance, she could make out the sharp lines of his jaw, the dark hair that was just slightly too long to be purely professional, the way he moved with a confident grace that spoke of power and absolute control. Nathaniel Cross, her brother's rival, the man Daniel had warned her to avoid at every corporate event, every charity gala, every unfortunate encounter where business and social circles overlapped. The ruthless businessman who had been a thorn in her brother's side for the past 3 years, competing for clients, for deals, for dominance in a world where both men refused to accept second place. She had seen him before, of course. It was impossible not to notice him when he entered a room, those penetrating dark eyes that seemed to miss nothing, that infuriating smirk that suggested he knew something everyone else didn't. The way other people gravitated toward him, Despite his reputation for being cold and calculating in business, Emma had made it a point to stay far away from Nathaniel Cross. Her brother's enemy was her enemy. Simple as that. Loyalty meant something to her. But now, as he approached her car, his footsteps steady on the pavement, she realized with a sinking feeling that she had no choice. It was him or hours alone on this dark street, waiting for morning when businesses would open and she could find help. He stopped at her window, bending slightly to peer inside. Even through the glass, his presence was overwhelming. He raised an eyebrow in recognition. Emma rolled down her window halfway, her fingers still wrapped around the pepper spray just in case. "Car trouble?" His voice was deep, with a rough edge that sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. It wasn't a voice she had heard often. Most of their encounters had been at loud venues where conversation was sacrificed to networking and background music. "I'm fine," she said automatically, then cursed herself for the obvious lie. She was clearly not fine. "I've already called for help." "Your brother?" "That's none of your business." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. "Daniel Harrison's sister, stranded alone on an empty street. I'm sure he'd be thrilled to know I left you here." Emma glared at him. "I don't need your help. Your phone is dead, isn't it?" He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. "And your car isn't starting. You can sit here out of pride or you can accept a ride, your choice." "Why would you help me? You hate my brother." "I compete with your brother," Nathaniel corrected, his tone matter of fact. "There's a difference. And despite what you might think of me, I'm not going to leave a woman stranded alone at night." Emma wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to keep her distance from this man, but logic won over pride. She glanced at the empty street, at the darkness pressing in around her, at the long night stretching ahead if she stayed. "Fine," she said, grabbing her purse and opening the door. "Just a ride. That's all." As she slid into the passenger seat of his pristine car, leather interior, the faint scent of expensive cologne, everything screaming wealth and control, she felt his eyes on her. Not leering, but observant, analytical, like he was solving a puzzle. "Where to?" he asked, starting the engine. Emma gave him her address, then turned to stare out the window, determined to make this ride as silent as possible. But Nathaniel Cross, she was about to discover, had other plans. The silence lasted exactly 4 minutes. Nathaniel knew because he glanced at the dashboard clock when they pulled away from the curb, then again when he spoke. "You've been crying." Emma's head whipped toward him. "Excuse me?" "Your eyes are red, mascara smudged just slightly at the corners." He kept his gaze on the road, his tone clinical, as if he were presenting facts at a board meeting. "And you're gripping your purse like it's the only thing keeping you anchored." She stared at him, caught between outrage and surprise. No one ever noticed details like that about her. Marcus certainly never had. "I'm fine," she repeated, but her voice wavered this time. "Of course you are," Nathaniel replied, and she couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic or genuine. "That's why you're out alone at 10 o'clock at night on a deserted street, looking like your world just fell apart." Emma felt the tears threatening again and bit down hard on her lower lip. She would not cry in front of this man, would not show weakness to someone her brother considered an adversary. But Nathaniel surprised her again. His voice gentled, losing that sharp business edge. "I'm not trying to pry, but if there's something wrong, if someone hurt you, why would you care?" The words came out more broken than she intended. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." He was quiet for a moment, navigating through a yellow light. "You volunteer at the Children's Hospital every Tuesday. You have a degree in art history, but work in non-profit fundraising because you believe in making a difference over making money. You take your coffee black with exactly 1 sugar, and you have a habit of tucking your hair behind your left ear when you're nervous." Emma's mouth fell open. "How do you—" "I notice things." He glanced at her briefly, those dark eyes unreadable in the dim light from the dashboard. "Especially things that interest me." Her heart did something strange in her chest. "I interest you." She saw his jaw tighten, as if he'd said more than he intended. "You're Daniel Harrison's sister. Of course I'm aware of you." But that wasn't what he'd meant, and they both knew it. Emma should have left it alone, should have maintained the silence, accepted the ride, and never thought about this night again. But the pain was still too fresh, The betrayal too raw, and suddenly she needed to tell someone. Anyone, even if that someone was the last person she should be confiding in. "I caught my boyfriend cheating tonight," she said, her voice flat. 6 months together, I thought. It doesn't matter what I thought. I went to surprise him at his favorite restaurant and found him with someone else. His hands were all over her. Nathaniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "He's an idiot." "You don't even know him." "I don't need to." He pulled up to a red light and turned to look at her fully for the first time since she'd gotten in the car. The intensity in his gaze made her breath hitch. "Any man who would cheat on you is an idiot. And if I knew who he was, I'd make sure he regretted it." Emma's pulse quickened. There was something dangerous in his tone, something protective and possessive that had no business being there. They were practically strangers. Enemies by association. "You don't need to defend me," she said quietly. "We're not friends." "No," he agreed, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "We're not." The light turned green. A car honked behind them. Nathaniel looked away, accelerating smoothly through the intersection, but the air in the car had changed, charged. Heavy with something Emma couldn't name, but felt all the way to her bones. She should have been uncomfortable. Should have demanded he take her home immediately and never speak to her again. Instead, she found herself studying his profile, the strong line of his nose, the slight stubble along his jaw that suggested he'd been working late, the way his long fingers handled the steering wheel with casual competence. "Why were you on that street?" she asked, desperate to break the tension. "Meeting with a potential investor. His offices are in that district." "This late?" A slight smile curved his mouth. "Some of us don't believe in normal business hours. My brother says you're a workaholic who doesn't know when to quit. Your brother should talk." The smile widened fractionally. "He kept me on the phone for 45 minutes last week, arguing about a contract clause at midnight." Emma laughed before she could stop herself. It was true. Daniel was just as obsessive about work as his reputation suggested Nathaniel was. Maybe they were more alike than her brother wanted to admit. "What else does Daniel say about me?" Nathaniel asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice. "That you're ruthless, that you'll do anything to win, that I should stay far away from you at events because you're dangerous. And yet, here you are, in my car." "Desperate times," Emma said, but there was no heat in it. "Is that all I am to you? A desperate last option?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them was ready to explore. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his expression that made her chest tighten. Vulnerability, just a flash of it, quickly masked, but there nonetheless. "I don't know what you are," she admitted honestly. They pulled up in front of her apartment building. Nathaniel put the car in park, but didn't move to unlock the doors. He turned in his seat, his full attention on her, and Emma suddenly understood why people found him intimidating in boardrooms. "When Nathaniel Cross focused on you, it felt like you were the only person in the world." "He's an idiot," Nathaniel repeated, his voice rough. "Your ex. He's an idiot for cheating on a woman like you." "Like me? Smart, passionate, beautiful." He said the words like they were facts, not flattery. "The kind of woman who makes a man forget about everything else when she walks into a room." Emma's breath caught. "You're talking about me. Who else would I be talking about?" The confession hung in the air between them, too honest, too raw, too real for two people who were supposed to be on opposite sides. Emma's mind was racing. This was Nathaniel Cross, the man her brother called ruthless and untrustworthy, the rival, the enemy. But the way he was looking at her right now didn't feel like rivalry. It felt like hunger, like longing, like he'd been holding back for far too long and was finally letting her see. "I should go," Emma whispered, but she didn't move. "You should," Nathaniel agreed, but he didn't unlock the doors. They sat there in the darkness of his car, the city lights casting shadows across both their faces, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on them. Emma knew she should open the door, walk away, pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, she heard herself say, "Thank you, for the ride, and for listening." Something softened in his expression. "Any time." He reached across her to unlock the door, his arm brushing against hers, and Emma felt electricity spark at the brief contact. She grabbed her purse and hurried out before she could do something foolish like ask him to stay. As she walked toward her building, She felt his eyes on her. When she reached the door and looked back, he was still there, watching, making sure she got inside safely. Emma raised her hand in a small wave. Nathaniel returned it, then pulled away into the night. She stood in the lobby long after his taillights had disappeared, her hand pressed against her racing heart, wondering what on earth had just happened and why she couldn't stop replaying his words in her mind. Any man who would cheat on you is an idiot. Beautiful. The kind of woman who makes a man forget about everything else. Emma climbed the stairs to her apartment, collapsed on her couch, and realized with startling clarity that everything had just become infinitely more complicated. Emma spent the entire next day trying not to think about Nathaniel Cross. She failed miserably. She was in the middle of reviewing donor reports at her desk when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your car is at Miller's Auto Shop on 5th Street. They said the alternator failed. I took the liberty of having it towed there this morning. Send me the bill when it's fixed. NC." Emma stared at the message, her heart doing that strange fluttering thing again. He'd taken care of her car. Without being asked, without expecting anything in return, she typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "You didn't have to do that." His reply came within seconds. "I know." That was it. Just 2 words that somehow said everything and nothing at all. Emma put her phone down and tried to focus on work, but Nathaniel's face kept appearing in her mind. The way he'd looked at her in the car, the things he'd said, the genuine concern beneath his collected exterior. Her brother would be furious if he knew. The thought made her stomach twist with guilt. Daniel had been there for her after their parents died 5 years ago, had helped her through her grief, had been both brother and protector when she needed him most. His opinion mattered. His trust mattered. But so did the strange, inexplicable pull she felt toward a man she barely knew. 3 days later, Emma found herself at her favorite coffee shop, a sophisticated little place tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing boutique, far enough from her office that she rarely ran into co-workers. She needed to think, to clear her head, to figure out how to respond to Marcus's increasingly desperate messages, begging for a chance to explain. She ordered her usual black coffee with 1 sugar and turned to find a table, and stopped dead. Nathaniel Cross sat in the corner booth, a laptop open in front of him, his jacket draped over the chair beside him. He wore a charcoal grey shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, revealing tanned skin and the expensive watch that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He was focused on his screen, one hand absently running through his dark hair in a gesture that was oddly endearing. Emma's first instinct was to leave. Her second was to stay and pretend she hadn't seen him. Her third, the one she foolishly followed, was to walk over. "Small world," she said. Nathaniel looked up, and she watched surprise flicker across his features before something warmer replaced it. "Emma," the way he said her name, like he'd been thinking it, tasting it in his mind, made her knees weak. "I don't want to interrupt your work," she said quickly. "I just wanted to say thank you again. For the car situation. You really didn't have to—" "Sit," he interrupted, closing his laptop. "Please." Emma hesitated, glancing around the coffee shop. It was relatively empty, just a few other customers scattered at distant tables. No one who would recognize them and report back to Daniel. She sat. For a moment they just looked at each other. Emma noticed details she'd missed in the darkness of his car. The small scar near his left eyebrow. The way his eyes weren't just dark brown, but had flecks of amber near the center. The fullness of his lower lip that made her think wholly inappropriate thoughts. "This is your regular place?" Nathaniel asked, breaking the silence. "How did you—" Emma stopped, remembering. "You notice things." A slight smile curved his mouth. "I do. I've seen you here before. Twice. Always on Thursday afternoons around 3 o'clock. Always the same order. Always sitting by the window with a book. That's slightly disturbing. Or attentive." He leaned forward, his forearms resting on the table. "There's a difference." Emma's pulse quickened. "And which is it?" "With you. Definitely attentive." The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. She should leave. This was dangerous territory, sitting here with him, letting him look at her like she was something precious and fascinating. "Tell me something," Nathaniel said, his voice dropping lower. "Are you here because you knew I'd be here, or is this actually a coincidence?" Emma felt her cheeks warm. I didn't know you'd be here. I've never seen you here before. I don't usually come to this location. My office is on the other side of town." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I came here today hoping I might run into you." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "Why?" "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, as if the admission cost him something. "And before you say what I know you're thinking, that this is impossible, that your brother would never approve, that we're supposed to be on opposite sides, I already know all of that. Believe me, I've tried to talk myself out of this. And it's not working." Emma stared at him, her mind racing. This was insane. They'd spent maybe 30 minutes together total, and yet she understood exactly what he meant because she felt it too. This inexplicable connection that defied logic and reason, and every warning bell her rational mind was screaming. "I ended things with Marcus," she heard herself say, "officially, last night. He kept calling, kept making excuses, but I told him we were done." Something fierce and possessive flashed in Nathaniel's eyes. "Good. He didn't deserve you. You don't even know what kind of person I am, not really. Then let me learn." Nathaniel reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of touching hers, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "Have coffee with me. Really have coffee with me, not just coincidentally sitting at the same place. Let me take you to dinner. My brother doesn't get to decide who you spend time with." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "I know he's important to you, Emma. I know family loyalty matters. But you're a grown woman, capable of making her own choices." Emma looked down at their hands, separated by mere centimeters. If she moved even slightly, they would touch. The thought made her pulse race. "One dinner," she said quietly, "just to talk. To figure out if this, whatever this is real or just some strange reaction to my breakup and a dramatic night." "It's real," Nathaniel said with absolute certainty. "At least for me, it's real. But I'll accept one dinner to prove it to you." Emma lifted her gaze to his. Somewhere quiet, somewhere Daniel won't find out. She hated herself a little for the secrecy, for essentially agreeing to hide something from her brother. But the alternative, confronting Daniel's wrath before she even knew if this connection with Nathaniel meant anything, felt worse. "Tomorrow night," Nathaniel said. "There's a small Italian restaurant in Chelsea. Family-owned, private booths, incredible food. 8 o'clock. Emma nodded, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Okay." They sat there for another hour, their coffee growing cold as they talked about everything and nothing. Books they loved, movies that moved them, the strange comfort of rain against windows. Nathaniel was nothing like she'd expected. He was thoughtful and surprisingly funny, with a dry wit that made her laugh more than she had in months. He asked questions like he genuinely cared about her answers, listening with an attention that made her feel seen in a way she never had before. When Emma finally stood to leave, gathering her things with reluctant movements, Nathaniel stood as well. He walked her to the door, his hand hovering near the small of her back, but not quite touching. The almost contact was somehow more intimate than an actual touch would have been. "Emma," he said as she pushed open the door. She turned back, and the look on his face stole her breath. "I meant what I said that night. You're the kind of woman who makes a man forget everything else." Before she could respond, he stepped back, giving her space to leave, even though everything in his posture suggested he wanted to pull her closer. Emma walked away on shaking legs, knowing with absolute certainty that tomorrow night would change everything. Nathaniel arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes early, which was unusual for him. He was always punctual, never early, never flustered by meetings or negotiations that could make or break million-dollar deals. But this wasn't business. This was Emma Harrison, and the thought of seeing her again had consumed every waking moment since their coffee shop encounter. He'd tried to focus on work, tried to review contracts and analyze market reports. Instead, he found himself wondering what she'd wear, how her hair would fall around her shoulders, whether she'd smile at him the way she had yesterday, soft and genuine, like he was worth smiling at. The realization that he was in serious trouble hit him around the 15-minute mark. When Emma walked through the door at precisely 8 o'clock, Nathaniel forgot how to breathe. She wore a deep emerald dress that brought out the green flecks in her hazel eyes, the fabric hugging her curves in a way that made his mouth go dry. Her hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, and she'd applied just enough makeup to highlight her natural beauty without hiding it. She was devastating. And she was looking at him with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation that made him want to protect her from everything, including himself. "Hi," she said softly as she reached the table. Nathaniel stood, pulling out her chair in a gesture his mother had drilled into him as a teenager. "You look beautiful." Emma's cheeks flushed as she sat. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." The dinner started awkwardly, both of them too aware of the significance of being here together, of what it meant to deliberately seek each other out, despite all the reasons they shouldn't. But within minutes, the conversation flowed as naturally as it had at the coffee shop. Nathaniel learned that Emma volunteered at the children's hospital, not out of obligation, but because her mother had been a pediatric nurse before she died. That she'd wanted to be an artist, but chose fundraising because she could still work with art while making a tangible difference. That she was terrified of thunderstorms, but loved the rain. Emma learned that Nathaniel had built his company from nothing after his father cut him off for refusing to join the family business. That he worked obsessive hours because achievement was the only thing he'd ever been taught to value, and he was still learning how to want other things. That he played piano when stressed, though he hadn't told anyone that in years. "Why not?" Emma asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Because people expect me to be a certain way." Nathaniel traced the rim of his wineglass, his guard lowering in a way that would have alarmed him if he'd stopped to think about it. "Ruthless, focused solely on business. The moment you show softness, show humanity, people try to use it against you. That's a lonely way to live." "It's effective." "But lonely," Emma repeated, her eyes sad. Nathaniel looked at her across the candlelit table, this woman who saw through his carefully constructed armor without even trying, and felt something crack open in his chest. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "Lonely." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. The contact was electric, sending heat racing up his arm and straight to his heart. Her fingers were delicate against his larger hand, but there was strength in her touch. Comfort. "You don't have to be that way with me," Emma said. "I won't use it against you." Nathaniel turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. "Promise?" "Promise." They stayed like that, hands intertwined, until the waiter came to clear their plates. Even then, Nathaniel was reluctant to let go. After dinner, Emma mentioned a bookstore a few blocks away that stayed open late. "They have a rare book section I've been meaning to check out. Want to come?" Nathaniel would have followed her anywhere in that moment, but he simply said, "Lead the way." The bookstore was a maze of towering shelves and cozy reading nooks, the kind of place that smelled like old paper and new possibilities. Emma moved through it like she'd been there 100 times, clearly comfortable in this world of words and stories. They found themselves in the classic literature section, both reaching for the same worn copy of Jane Eyre at the exact same moment. Their hands collided and Emma laughed, a sound that Nathaniel wanted to hear every day for the rest of his life. "You read Bronte?" she asked, surprise evident in her voice. "I'm full of surprises." He let her take the book, watching as she flipped through it with reverent fingers. "What's your favorite part?" "When Rochester tells Jane that she's made him feel again after years of numbness, that she's brought light into his darkness." Emma looked up at him, and the parallel wasn't lost on either of them. "What's yours?" "When Jane tells him that they're equal in spirit, despite what the world thinks about their stations in life." Nathaniel stepped closer, drawn to her like gravity. That true connection transcends social expectations and outside judgments. The air between them thickened with meaning. Emma's lips parted slightly, her breathing shallow. Nathaniel's gaze dropped to her mouth, and he saw her notice. Saw her pupils dilate in response. "Nathaniel," she whispered, and the sound of his name on her lips nearly undid him. But they were in public, in a bookstore where anyone could see. So Nathaniel forced himself to step back, to breathe, to remember that rushing this would ruin everything. "There's an art gallery opening next week," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Thursday evening. Contemporary pieces. Would you like to go?" Emma nodded, seemingly grateful for the subject change even as disappointment flickered across her features. "I'd love to." The following Thursday, Nathaniel picked Emma up at 7. She wore black pants and a silk ivory blouse that made her skin glow. They drove to the gallery with her hand resting on the console between them, his fingers occasionally brushing hers in touches that felt both accidental and entirely deliberate. The gallery was crowded with pretentious art enthusiasts and wealthy collectors, but Nathaniel barely noticed anyone except Emma. She moved from piece to piece with an expert eye, explaining composition and technique with a passion that made her even more beautiful. They found themselves in a quieter back room, standing before an abstract piece that somehow captured the chaos of emotion in swirls of deep blues and burning reds. Emma was explaining the artist's use of color theory when Nathaniel stopped listening to her words and simply watched her. The animation in her face, the graceful movements of her hands, the way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking. He couldn't help himself anymore. Nathaniel stepped closer, crowding into her space in a way that made her words trail off. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Emma's breath hitched, her eyes widening as she realized what was about to happen. "Tell me to stop," Nathaniel said, his voice low and rough with barely contained desire. "Tell me this is a bad idea, that I should walk away, that your brother would have my head." "I should," Emma whispered, but she tilted her face up toward his, her eyes falling to his lips. "I know I should. But I can't." Nathaniel's hand slid into her hair, his other hand finding her waist and pulling her against him. Emma gasped softly at the contact, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. He could feel her heart racing beneath his palm, matching the frantic rhythm of his own. He lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Emma rose on her toes to meet him, her eyes fluttering closed, her lips parting in anticipation. They were a breath apart when a voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Emma, what the hell is going on?" They sprang apart. Nathaniel's hand dropped from Emma's face, but he kept himself positioned slightly in front of her, protective even in the face of her brother's fury. Daniel Harrison stood 10 feet away, his face a mask of shock and anger. His eyes moved from Emma to Nathaniel and back again, and Nathaniel watched realization dawn with a cold dread settling in his stomach. "Daniel," Emma started, her voice shaking, "I asked you a question." Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet as he walked toward them. "What the hell is going on between you and him?" "We were just looking at art," Emma said, but the lie was transparent even to her own ears. Daniel's laugh was bitter. "Looking at art. Right, because you always stand that close to look at paintings." Nathaniel stepped forward, meeting Daniel's glare with a steady gaze. "This isn't what you think." "Don't." Daniel held up a hand, his face flushed with rage. "Don't you dare try to explain this to me. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, Cross, but using my sister to get to me—" "It's not like that," Nathaniel said, his own temper starting to rise. "Then what is it like? Huh? You expect me to believe that you just happen to develop feelings for Emma? That this has nothing to do with our rivalry? Believe whatever you want," Nathaniel said coldly, "but leave Emma out of your paranoia. She's my sister." "I'm right here," Emma interjected, her voice stronger now as she moved to stand between them. "And I'm not a child, Daniel. I can make my own decisions about who I spend time with." Daniel's eyes softened when he looked at her, but the anger remained. "Emma, you don't know him like I do. He's ruthless. He'll do anything to win." "You're wrong about him." "Am I?" Daniel turned his attention back to Nathaniel. "Tell her about the Westfield deal. Tell her how you sabotaged my negotiations by spreading rumors to the board." "That's not what happened," Nathaniel said evenly. "I won that deal fair and square. If you can't accept losing, that's your problem." Daniel took a step forward, fists clenched. Emma quickly placed a hand on her brother's chest, holding him back. "That's enough, both of you." She looked at Nathaniel with pleading eyes. "I should go." Every instinct in Nathaniel screamed at him to fight, to refuse to let her leave, to finish what they'd started, but he could see the distress on Emma's face, the conflict tearing her apart, and he cared about her too much to make it worse. "I'll call you," he said quietly. Daniel let out a harsh sound. "No, you won't. Emma, let's go. Now." Nathaniel watched helplessly as Daniel practically dragged his sister out of the gallery, Emma looking back over her shoulder with tears in her eyes. When they disappeared from view, Nathaniel stood alone in the empty room, staring at the abstract painting that had started everything, and wondered if he'd just lost something precious before it even had a chance to begin. The car ride back to Emma's apartment was suffocating. Daniel gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. His jaw clenched in a way that reminded Emma of their father when he was disappointed. That comparison hurt worse than any words her brother could have said. "Daniel, don't." His voice was sharp. "Not yet. Let me get you home first before I say something I'll regret." Emma stared out the window, her throat tight with unshed tears. The moment with Nathaniel replayed in her mind, the way his hand had felt cupping her face, the heat in his eyes, the certainty that if Daniel hadn't interrupted, that kiss would have changed everything. And now she might never get that chance again. When they pulled up to her building, Daniel finally turned to face her. The anger had faded slightly, replaced by something that looked like hurt and fear. "Emma, I need you to understand something." His voice was quieter now, pleading. "Nathaniel Cross isn't who you think he is. He's calculating. Everything he does has a purpose, a strategy behind it. You don't know him. Neither do you. That's my point." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You've known him for what, a few weeks? I've been competing against him for 3 years. I've seen how he operates, how he manipulates situations to his advantage. He's not manipulating me. How can you be sure?" Daniel's eyes searched hers desperately. "Emma, you just got out of a relationship where someone betrayed you. You're vulnerable, and he knows that. He's taking advantage." "Stop it." Emma's voice rose, surprising them both. "Stop acting like I'm some naive child who can't think for herself. I'm 30 years old, Daniel. I can make my own decisions. Even when those decisions involve a man who would do anything to hurt me. This isn't about you." The words exploded out of her, fueled by frustration and guilt and the terrible pressure of being caught between two people she cared about. "Not everything in my life has to revolve around your business rivalries. Nathaniel isn't pursuing me to get to you. He's not that petty. You've known him for 5 minutes and you think you understand him better than I do. Maybe I see things you refuse to see because you're too busy viewing him as an enemy." Emma grabbed her purse, preparing to leave the car. "He's not a monster, Daniel. He's just a person trying to build something like you. Don't compare me to him." Emma paused with her hand on the door handle, turning to look at her brother one more time. The pain on his face nearly broke her resolve. Daniel had been her rock after their parents died, her protector, her best friend. The thought of disappointing him made her chest ache, but the thought of never seeing Nathaniel again felt like losing something essential. "I love you," she said quietly. "You're my brother, and you always will be. But I can't let you dictate who I'm allowed to have feelings for. That's not fair, and you know it." She got out of the car before he could respond, walking quickly to her building without looking back. Inside her apartment, Emma leaned against the closed door and let the tears finally fall. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathaniel. "Are you all right?" Emma stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She should tell him this was over before it even began. Should protect her relationship with her brother. Should choose the easier path. Instead, she typed, "Can we talk tomorrow?" His response was immediate, anytime, anywhere. Emma clutched the phone to her chest, torn between relief and terror at what she was choosing. The next morning, Emma found herself at Rachel's apartment, desperate for advice from the one person who knew her better than anyone. Her best friend since high school, Rachel had been there through every heartbreak, every triumph, every moment of doubt. Rachel opened the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, took one look at Emma's face and pulled her inside. "Wine or coffee?" Rachel asked, already heading to the kitchen. "It's 10 in the morning." "Wine it is." Rachel poured 2 generous glasses and led Emma to the couch curling up beside her. "Okay, start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." The story poured out in a torrent. The night her car broke down, the coffee shop encounter, the dinner, the gallery, the almost kiss that Daniel had interrupted. Emma told her about the connection she felt with Nathaniel, the way he made her feel seen and valued in a way Marcus never had. She told her about Daniel's fury, his prohibition, the impossible choice she was facing. "And the worst part," Emma said, her voice breaking, "is that Daniel isn't entirely wrong. I barely know Nathaniel. How can I be so sure he's not using me? How can I trust my judgment after I was so wrong about Marcus?" Rachel was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in her glass thoughtfully. Then she set it down and took Emma's hands. "Look at me," Rachel said firmly. "You are not an idiot. Marcus was a lying piece of garbage who didn't deserve you, but that doesn't mean your judgment is flawed. It means he was a good liar. But let me finish. I was at that gallery opening too, remember? I saw how Nathaniel looked at you before Daniel showed up. Rachel squeezed her hands. Emma, men don't look at women like that when they're faking it. He looked at you like you were the only person in the entire room, like you hung the moon and stars just for him. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Daniel says he's manipulating me. Daniel is overprotective and stubborn. He loves you, and after what Marcus did, he's terrified of seeing you hurt again. But that doesn't mean he's right about Nathaniel. So, what do? You trust yourself. Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. You're one of the smartest, most intuitive people I know. If your gut is telling you that Nathaniel is genuine, then trust that. And if Daniel can't understand, then that's his problem to work through, not yours. Emma wiped at her eyes. What if choosing Nathaniel ruins my relationship with Daniel? What if not choosing Nathaniel ruins your chance at real happiness? Rachel countered. You deserve to be happy, Emma. You deserve someone who sees you the way Nathaniel clearly does. And if your brother really loves you, he'll learn to accept that eventually. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying and complicated and messy. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. Rachel paused, then added with a slight grimace. Speaking of complicated, Daniel came by here yesterday looking for you. He did? Oh yes, in full big brother on a mission mode. Rachel rolled her eyes. He was insufferably arrogant, demanding to know if I knew where you were, acting like he had the right to track your every movement. Despite everything, Emma felt a smile tug at her lips. What did you say? I told him to stop acting like he owns you and that maybe he should trust your judgment for once. Rachel's cheeks flushed slightly. He didn't appreciate that. Said I should stop sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. I told him to stop being a controlling jerk. We may have raised our voices. Rachel, I know. He's your brother and I should be more patient with him. But honestly, Emma, someone needs to tell him he's being ridiculous. Rachel stood up and walked to the window, her arms crossed defensively. He looked at me with that infuriating expression of his, like I'm some obstacle he needs to manage, and stormed out. Emma studied her friend's profile, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way she wouldn't quite meet Emma's eyes when talking about Daniel. There was something there, something Rachel wasn't saying, but Emma was too overwhelmed with her own situation to push. Thank you, Emma said softly, for always being on my side. Rachel turned back with a warm smile. Always. Now are you going to call this man or make him suffer? Emma pulled out her phone, staring at Nathaniel's contact information. Her finger hovered over the call button. Then she pressed it. He answered on the first ring. Emma. Just her name, spoken in that deep voice that made her shiver. In that single word, she heard relief, longing, concern. Can you meet me? She asked. There's a park near my apartment. Willow Creek Park, I need to see you. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Emma ended the call and looked at Rachel, who was grinning like the cat who caught the canary. That's my girl, Rachel said. Now go get your man. As Emma headed for the door, she felt equal parts terrified and exhilarated. She was choosing him, and whatever came next, she would face it head on. Nathaniel arrived at Willow Creek Park in 15 minutes, breaking at least 3 traffic laws in the process. He told himself it was just efficiency, just wanting to address this situation before it spiraled further out of control. But the truth he was finally admitting to himself, was that the thought of losing Emma before he'd even truly had her was unbearable. He spotted her on a bench near the fountain, the morning sun catching in her hair and turning it to gold. She wore jeans and a simple cream sweater, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup like she needed the warmth despite the mild weather. When she looked up and saw him approaching, the vulnerability in her expression made his chest tighten. Hi, Emma said softly, as he sat down beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Hi. Nathaniel wanted to reach for her hand, to pull her close and tell her everything would be fine. Instead, he waited, giving her the space to say what she needed to say. For a long moment, Emma just stared at the fountain, watching water cascade over sculpted stone. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I shouldn't be here. My brother explicitly told me to stay away from you. And Daniel, he's not just my brother. He's my best friend. After our parents died, he was everything. He helped me through the grief, supported me, protected me. She paused, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Defying him feels like betrayal. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. Then why are you here? Emma turned to look at him, and the raw honesty in her gaze stole his breath. Because when I'm with you, I feel something I've never felt before. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, like I'm finally awake after sleepwalking through life. She let out a shaky laugh. Does that sound insane? No. Nathaniel's voice was rough with emotion. It sounds exactly like what I've been feeling since the night I found you stranded on that street. He shifted closer, his hand coming to rest on the bench between them, not touching, but near enough that the space felt charged with possibility. Emma, I need you to understand something. Nathaniel chose his words carefully, knowing this moment would determine everything. Your brother isn't wrong to be cautious. In business, I am ruthless. I do what's necessary to win, and I don't apologize for it. That's the world I've lived in for so long that it became who I am. He saw disappointment flicker across Emma's face and hurried to continue. But with you, he stopped, struggling with the vulnerability of what he was about to admit. With you, I'm not that person. I don't want to be that person. You make me want to be someone better. Someone worthy of the way you look at me. Like I'm more than just my accomplishments and my reputation. Emma's breath hitched. Nathaniel, I'm not using you to get to Daniel. I swear on everything I have that this, he gestured between them, has nothing to do with business or rivalry or strategy. This is real, you're real, and the thought of walking away from you to make your brother comfortable is killing me, but I'll do it if that's what you need. The words hung in the air between them, a promise and a surrender all at once. Emma stared at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for any hint of deception. Nathaniel let her look, kept his expression open and honest, despite every instinct that screamed at him to protect himself, to hide the depth of what he was feeling. Then Emma did something that surprised him. She laughed, a genuine, relieved laugh that transformed her entire face. What? Nathaniel asked, confused. You're terrible at this, Emma said, wiping at her eyes, at pretending not to care. Your whole reputation is built on being cold and calculating, but you just laid your heart out like it was nothing. A reluctant smile tugged at Nathaniel's lips. Only with you. Only with me, Emma repeated softly. Then she reached out and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Okay. Okay? I choose this. I choose you. Her voice grew stronger, more certain. I don't know how we'll handle Daniel, and I don't know if this will work out, but I know I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't try. Nathaniel felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying since the gallery. He brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that made her breath catch. Thank you, he said simply. They sat like that for a while, hands intertwined, watching the fountain and the people passing by. It was peaceful in a way Nathaniel had never experienced, just existing beside someone without needing to fill the silence or prove anything. Tell me something, Emma said eventually. Something real that you've never told anyone else. Nathaniel considered her request. There were so many things he kept hidden, so many parts of himself he'd learned to bury under the weight of expectations and ambition. When my father cut me off for refusing to join his company, he told me I'd be back within 6 months, begging for forgiveness. Nathaniel's voice was quiet, the old wound still tender after all these years. He said I didn't have what it took to make it on my own, that without the family name and money I was nothing. Emma's hand tightened around his. I built my company partly to prove him wrong. Every success, every deal, every victory, it was all about showing him that I could do it without him. Nathaniel paused, then continued with difficulty. But the truth is, I stopped enjoying it years ago. The work, the competition, the constant need to be the best, it's exhausting and lonely. I've been so focused on proving my worth through achievement that I forgot to actually live. What changed? Nathaniel turned to look at her, and the tenderness in his expression made Emma's heart skip. You. The night I found you on that street, something shifted. For the first time in years, I wanted something more than another victory. I wanted to know you, to hear you laugh, to be the person who made you smile. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. You do make me smile, even when you're infuriating. Infuriating? Nathaniel raised an eyebrow, some of his usual confidence returning. When have I been infuriating? Right now, looking at me like that when we're in public and I can't kiss you. The words slipped out before Emma could stop them. She felt her cheeks flush, but Nathaniel's eyes darkened with desire that made her stomach flip. "Emma," he said, his voice dropping to that rough tone that sent shivers down her spine. "If you keep saying things like that, I'm going to forget we're in a park full of people. Would that be so terrible?" "Yes." Nathaniel's thumb stroked across her knuckles, the simple touch somehow more intimate than anything she'd experienced with Marcus. "Because when I finally kiss you, and I will kiss you, Emma, I want to do it properly, not rushing, not hiding. I want to take my time and show you exactly how much you've come to mean to me." Emma's breath came faster. "That's a dangerous promise." "I always keep my promises." They sat in charged silence, both acutely aware of the tension building between them. Finally, Emma stood, pulling Nathaniel up with her. "Walk with me," she asked. They strolled through the park, hands still linked, talking about everything and nothing. Nathaniel told her about the piano he kept in his apartment, how he played late at night when insomnia struck. Emma told him about her dream of opening a small art gallery someday, a place for emerging artists who needed exposure. "Why don't you?" Nathaniel asked. "Open the gallery." "Money, time, fear." Emma shrugged. "All the usual reasons people don't chase their dreams." "I could help." "No." Emma stopped walking and turned to face him. "I appreciate the offer, really, but if I do this, I need to do it on my own. Otherwise, I'll always wonder if I actually earned it, or if it was just given to me." Nathaniel studied her face, and Emma saw respect join the desire in his eyes. "That's admirable, stubborn, but admirable," says the man who refused his father's company to build his own empire. Touché. They reached Emma's apartment building too soon. Neither wanted the morning to end, but reality was pressing in. They both had work, responsibilities, lives that continued despite this new thing growing between them. "I need to tell Daniel something," Emma said as they stood in front of her building. "Not about us specifically, not yet, but I need to make him understand that he doesn't get to control this part of my life. That won't be easy." "No," Emma agreed, "but it's necessary." Nathaniel reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. The gesture was so tender, so careful, that Emma felt tears threaten again. "Call me after," he asked. "I'll be worrying." "You'll be worrying?" Emma smiled. "The fearless businessman who faces down corporate sharks for breakfast. For you, I'll worry constantly." Nathaniel's expression turned serious. "Emma, if Daniel gives you an ultimatum, I won't choose between you, not like that. But I will make him understand that my life is mine to live." She placed her hand over his where it still cupped her face. "Trust me? With everything." Emma rose on her toes and pressed a kiss to his cheek, letting her lips linger just a moment longer than strictly friendly. When she pulled back, Nathaniel's eyes were closed, his expression almost pained with restraint. "Soon," Emma promised, understanding what he was holding back. "When the time is right." Nathaniel opened his eyes and looked at her with such intensity that Emma felt it like a physical touch. "I'm holding you to that." As Emma walked into her building, she felt his gaze following her until she disappeared from view. And despite the difficult conversation she knew awaited her with Daniel, despite all the complications and obstacles ahead, she felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time since her parents died, Emma felt truly alive. The conversation with Daniel had been as difficult as Emma anticipated. He'd shown up at her apartment the day after the park, his anger tempered but not gone. They'd argued for hours, voices rising and falling, old wounds and new fears spilling out between them. In the end, Daniel had made his position clear. He didn't trust Nathaniel, didn't believe his intentions were pure, and thought Emma was making a terrible mistake. But he hadn't forbidden her, hadn't issued an ultimatum. Just asked her to be careful, his voice breaking on the last word in a way that shattered her heart. Emma had promised to be careful. What she hadn't promised was to stay away. Now, 3 days later, she stood outside Nathaniel's apartment for the first time, her heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. The building was in an upscale neighborhood, all glass and modern architecture, exactly what she'd expected from a successful businessman. What she hadn't expected was the warmth that greeted her when Nathaniel opened his door. "You found it," he said, his smile genuine and relieved as he stepped back to let her in. Emma walked into his space and stopped, surprised. She'd anticipated something cold and minimalist, all steel and leather and impersonal design. Instead, the apartment was warm, lived in. Books lined floor-to-ceiling shelves, a worn leather couch faced a fireplace, and in the corner sat a beautiful grand piano, its surface covered with scattered sheet music. "You actually play," Emma said, walking toward the instrument. "Did you think I was lying?" Nathaniel came up behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "No, I just—" Emma ran her fingers over the keys, not pressing down. "I guess I didn't expect it to be so prominent. You keep everything else about yourself so hidden." "Not from you." Nathaniel's voice was soft, intimate. "Never from you." Emma turned to find him watching her with that intense focus that made her feel like the most important person in the world. Before she could overthink it, before fear could stop her, she reached up and cupped his face. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me the parts of yourself you hide from everyone else." Nathaniel's eyes darkened. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent heat racing through her veins. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." What followed was an evening unlike any Emma had experienced. Nathaniel played for her, pieces by Chopin and Debussy that filled his apartment with haunting beauty. His fingers moved over the keys with a grace that mesmerized her, and when he played something he'd composed himself, Emma felt tears prick her eyes at the raw emotion in every note. Afterward, he cooked dinner while she sat at his kitchen counter, watching in amazement as the ruthless businessman transformed into someone domestic and playful. He told her about learning to cook in college when he'd had no money for restaurants, about the satisfaction of creating something with his own hands. "You're full of surprises," Emma said, accepting the glass of wine he offered. "Good surprises, I hope. The best kind." They ate at his dining table, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The conversation flowed effortlessly, jumping from philosophy to favorite childhood memories to dreams they'd never told anyone. Nathaniel talked about his strained relationship with his father, how the cutoff had hurt more than he'd ever admitted. Emma shared her fear of never being enough, of always falling short of expectations. "You're more than enough," Nathaniel said, his hand covering hers on the table. "You're extraordinary, Emma. Don't let anyone, including yourself, make you believe otherwise." After dinner, they moved to the couch. Nathaniel put on soft jazz, and Emma found herself curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders, feeling safer and more content than she had in years. "This feels dangerous," Emma murmured against his chest. "What does?" "How right this feels. How easy. Like we've been doing this forever." Nathaniel's arm tightened around her. "Is that a bad thing?" "It's terrifying." Emma tilted her head back to look at him. "What if this ends? What if we don't work out? I don't think I could handle losing this." "Then we won't let it end." Nathaniel's hand came up to trace the line of her jaw, his touch reverent. "Emma, I know we've only known each other a few weeks. I know this seems fast and probably crazy, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am about you." "Nathaniel, let me finish." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, making her breath hitch. "I've spent my entire adult life building walls, protecting myself, never letting anyone get close enough to matter. And then you walked into my life, or rather broke down on that street, and suddenly all those walls felt pointless. You make me want things I didn't think I was capable of wanting. A real connection. Someone to come home to. A future that's about more than the next deal or the next victory." Emma felt tears slide down her cheeks. "You're going to make me fall in love with you." "Good." Nathaniel wiped her tears with gentle fingers. "Because I'm already halfway there with you." The confession hung in the air between them, profound and terrifying. Emma's heart raced as she processed his words, the weight of what he was offering. This wasn't a casual fling or a rebound. This was real and deep and everything she'd been afraid to hope for. "I need to tell you something," Emma said, her voice trembling. "About my last relationship. You don't have to." "I want to." She sat up slightly, needing to see his face for this. "Marcus wasn't the first person to cheat on me. My ex before him, the one I dated for 2 years in my mid-20s, he cheated too. And both times, I blamed myself, wondered what I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently." Nathaniel's jaw clenched, anger flashing in his eyes. "I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that trusting you, choosing you, is one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm terrified of being wrong again, of making another mistake." Nathaniel pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her protectively. "You're not making a mistake. I swear to you, Emma, I will never betray your trust like that. Never. You're too precious, too important. Promise me something. Anything. If you ever stop wanting this, wanting us, you'll tell me. You won't string me along or let me believe in something that isn't real. I promise." Nathaniel pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "But Emma, I don't think that's going to happen. You've become essential to me in a way I can't fully explain." Emma believed him. Maybe she was being foolish. Maybe she was setting herself up for heartbreak. But in that moment, wrapped in his arms with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, she believed every word. They stayed like that for hours, talking and touching and learning each other. Nathaniel told her about his childhood, about the pressure of expectations and the loneliness of never feeling good enough. Emma shared her grief over losing her parents, how it had changed her relationship with Daniel, made them cling to each other perhaps too tightly. When Emma finally left near midnight, Nathaniel walked her to her car, his hand never leaving the small of her back. At her door he cupped her face and pressed a kiss to her forehead, tender and chaste and somehow more intimate than anything else they'd shared that evening. "Same time next week?" he asked. "I'll be here." As Emma drove home, she realized something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just attraction or infatuation anymore. This was the beginning of something profound, something that could either heal her or destroy her completely. She was choosing to believe in the healing. 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and secret smiles. Emma and Nathaniel fell into a rhythm. Dinners at his apartment twice a week, coffee shop meetings that looked accidental but were carefully orchestrated, late-night phone calls that stretched until dawn. They were building something beautiful in the shadows, and while the secrecy sometimes felt heavy, the relationship itself felt impossibly light. Emma was falling. Not the tentative, cautious falling of someone who'd been burned before, but the headlong, terrifying plunge of someone who'd finally found what she'd been searching for without even knowing she was looking. "You're smiling at your phone again," Rachel said, plopping down on the bench beside Emma during their regular Tuesday lunch. "Let me guess. Tall, dark, and devastating." Emma tried to school her expression into something more neutral and failed. "Maybe. How's it going, the secret romance?" "It's..." Emma struggled to find the right words. "It's everything, Rachel. He's everything. And that terrifies me." Rachel studied her friend's face, her expression softening. "You're in love with him?" It wasn't a question, but Emma answered anyway. "I think I am. Is that insane? We've only been seeing each other for a few weeks." "Love doesn't follow a timeline." Rachel squeezed her hand. "But Emma, you can't keep this secret forever. Eventually Daniel will find out, and the longer you wait, the worse his reaction will be." "I know, Emma sighed. "I want a little more time. Time to be sure this is real before I blow up my relationship with my brother over it." "It is real, though. Anyone can see that." Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Nathaniel. "Emergency board meeting running late. Rain check on dinner." Emma felt disappointment wash over her, which was ridiculous considering she'd see him tomorrow. When had she become this person? The one who counted hours until the next meeting, who felt physically incomplete when he wasn't around. She was typing a response when another text came through. "Unless you want to come to my place around 9, I'll make it worth the wait." Emma's pulse quickened. "I'll be there." That evening, Emma arrived at Nathaniel's apartment to find candles lit throughout the space and soft music playing. He greeted her at the door in jeans and a casual shirt, his hair slightly mussed from running his hands through it, something she'd learned he did when stressed. "Rough day?" she asked, stepping into his embrace without hesitation. "Better now." Nathaniel buried his face in her hair, breathing her in. "God, I missed you. It's been less than 24 hours." "I know. That's the problem." He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "I'm becoming dangerously dependent on you, Emma Harrison." The feeling's mutual. They ate the dinner he'd prepared, pasta with homemade sauce that he admitted took 3 tries to get right, and talked about their days. Emma told him about a particularly difficult donor who wanted to micromanage every aspect of a fundraiser. Nathaniel vented about a board member who questioned every decision, undermining him at every turn. "Why don't you remove him from the board?" Emma asked. "It's complicated. He has connections I need, and removing him would cause more problems than it solves." Nathaniel shrugged. "Sometimes in business you have to work with people you don't particularly like. That sounds exhausting." "It is." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "But coming home to you, or knowing I get to see you, makes it bearable. You're my escape from all of that." After dinner, Nathaniel pulled her to the couch and grabbed a soft blanket, wrapping them both in it. Emma nestled against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "Dance with me," Nathaniel said suddenly. "What?" He stood, pulling her up with him. "Dance with me. There's music playing, and I want to hold you." Emma let him draw her close, their bodies aligning perfectly as they swayed to the slow jazz filling his apartment. Nathaniel's hand splayed across her lower back, holding her against him, while his other hand cradled hers against his chest. Emma rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in his scent, cedar and something uniquely him. "I could stay like this forever," Emma whispered. "Then stay." Nathaniel's voice was rough with emotion. "Stay tonight. Fall asleep in my arms. Let me wake up next to you." Emma's breath caught. They'd been careful to keep things from moving too fast, both aware of the intensity between them and trying to be responsible, but the invitation hung in the air, heavy with promise and possibility. "Nathaniel?" "Just to sleep," he clarified, though the desire in his eyes told a different story. "I just want to hold you, to know what it feels like to fall asleep with you in my arms and wake up to your face." Emma pulled back to look at him, her heart racing. She saw vulnerability in his expression, a need that matched her own. This man who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions without flinching was asking her to stay with all the uncertainty of someone who feared rejection. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll stay." Relief and something deeper, something that looked like joy, flooded Nathaniel's features. He led her to his bedroom, and Emma's nerves spiked as she took in the massive bed, the masculine but tasteful decor, the intimacy of being in his private space. Nathaniel seemed to sense her hesitation. He handed her one of his shirts, soft and enormous, and pointed to the bathroom. "Take your time, I'll be right here." When Emma emerged wearing his shirt, her makeup washed off and her hair loose around her shoulders, Nathaniel's breath visibly caught. He stared at her like she was something precious and fragile, his eyes dark with barely contained emotion. "You're so beautiful," he said, his voice reverent. "And I don't just mean physically. Everything about you, Emma. Your kindness, your strength, the way you see the good in people. You're beautiful in ways that take my breath away." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Marcus had called her pretty. Her ex before him had said she was attractive. But no one had ever called her beautiful the way Nathaniel did, like it was a fundamental truth of the universe. They climbed into bed, and Nathaniel immediately pulled her close, her back to his chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. Emma laced her fingers through his, holding his hand against her heart. "I need to tell you something," Nathaniel said into the darkness. "About my last relationship." Emma squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. Her name was Victoria. "We dated for 2 years. She was smart, successful, beautiful, everything I thought I wanted." He paused, his breath warm against Emma's neck. "But she wanted more from me than I knew how to give. More time, more attention, more of me. She accused me of being married to my work, of choosing business over her, and she was right. What happened? She gave me an ultimatum, her or the company. I chose the company." Nathaniel's arm tightened around Emma. "I told myself it was the logical choice, that relationships were too complicated and messy, that I was better off alone. What changed? You." The word was simple, but carried immense weight. "With you, I don't feel like I'm choosing. Work doesn't feel more important. Nothing feels more important than this, than us. For the first time in my life, I want to put someone before my ambitions. I want to come home to someone. I want—" His voice broke. "I want a life that includes more than just the next deal." Emma turned in his arms, needing to see his face. Even in the dim light from the window, she could see the raw honesty in his expression, the fear and hope warring there. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "Scared of how much I feel for you. Scared of what it means. But Nathaniel—" She reached up, to trace his jaw with gentle fingers. "I've never felt safer than I do right now in your arms. And I've never wanted anything more than I want this. Want you." Nathaniel caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'm falling in love with you, Emma." "No," he corrected himself. "I've already fallen, completely, irrevocably." "I love you too," Emma whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. Nathaniel's eyes closed, his forehead pressing against hers. For a long moment, they just breathed together, letting the confession settle between them. Then Nathaniel kissed her, not the passionate, consuming kiss she'd imagined, but something softer, tender, a kiss that spoke of reverence and commitment and promises for the future. When they finally pulled apart, both were trembling. They held each other through the night, trading whispered confessions and gentle kisses, falling asleep tangled together as the city lights dimmed and dawn approached. And for the first time in longer than either could remember, both slept peacefully, complete. The charity benefit was Emma's idea of torture. She'd agreed to attend weeks ago, back when she thought she'd be going alone or perhaps with Marcus. Now, dressed in a flowing silver gown that Rachel had insisted she buy, Emma stood in the grand ballroom surrounded by the city's elite, knowing that both her brother and the man she loved would be here, separately, pretending they barely knew each other. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad," Rachel said, appearing at Emma's elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Here, liquid courage." "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who knows you." Rachel clinked their glasses together. "Just breathe, smile, make small talk about the weather and the overpriced auction items. You've done this 100 times. Never while trying to hide that I'm in love with my brother's rival." Rachel winced. "Point taken. Where is the delicious Mr. Cross anyway?" Emma's eyes found him instantly, as if drawn by magnetic force. Nathaniel stood across the ballroom in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made him look dangerous and elegant all at once. He was speaking with a group of investors, his expression polite but distant, the mask he wore in public firmly in place. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes flicked to hers. The connection was instantaneous and electric, and for just a moment his professional facade cracked, revealing raw hunger that made Emma's breath catch. Then Daniel appeared in her line of sight, and Nathaniel's expression shuttered completely. "This is going to be a long night," Emma muttered. It was. Emma made the rounds, chatting with donors and board members, all while acutely aware of Nathaniel's presence. They orbited each other like planets, never getting too close, never acknowledging each other beyond polite nods when their paths crossed in public view. But Emma felt every glance, every heated look he sent her way when he thought no one was watching. Her body hummed with awareness, with the memory of falling asleep in his arms just 2 nights ago, of waking to his kisses scattered across her shoulders. 2 hours into the event, Emma needed a break from the charade. She excused herself and headed toward the hallway that led to the restrooms, desperate for a moment of peace away from the crowd and the constant vigilance. She'd barely made it around the corner when a strong hand caught her wrist, pulling her into an alcove hidden from view. "Nathaniel, we shouldn't—" Emma started, but the words died as she saw the intensity in his eyes. "I know." His voice was rough, strained. "But I've been watching you all night in that dress, watching other men look at you, unable to touch you or claim you, and I'm losing my mind." Emma's pulse skyrocketed. "Nathaniel, someone could see—" "I don't care." But even as he said it, he positioned them deeper in the shadows, his body shielding her from any potential onlookers. "I need to touch you. Just for a moment. Please." The please undid her. Emma nodded, and Nathaniel's hands immediately found her waist, pulling her against him. They fit together perfectly, and Emma felt the tremor that ran through his body at the contact. "You're killing me in this dress," Nathaniel murmured, his lips grazing her temple. "All night, I've been imagining taking it off you. Slowly, inch by inch." Emma's knees weakened. "You can't say things like that here." "Why not?" His hands slid up her back, his touch burning through the thin fabric. "It's the truth. I want you, Emma. I want you so much it's driving me insane. I want you too." The confession came out breathless. "Every night when I go home alone, I lie in bed and think about you, about us, about what it would be like to—" Nathaniel groaned, his forehead dropping to hers. Don't tell me that when I can't do anything about it. They stood like that, bodies pressed together, breathing each other's air, the tension between them reaching unbearable levels. Emma's hands had somehow found their way into Nathaniel's hair, and his grip on her waist was almost bruising in its intensity. "I can't keep doing this," Nathaniel said, his voice ragged. "Pretending we're nothing to each other. Watching you from across rooms and not being able to hold your hand, it's torture. I know, but Daniel doesn't get to keep us apart." Nathaniel pulled back enough to look at her, and the fierce determination in his expression made her heart race. "I love you, Emma. I'm done hiding it. I want to tell the world that you're mine. We need more time. How much time? How long before we can stop sneaking around? How long before I can kiss you in public without worrying about who's watching?" Emma didn't have an answer. The truth was, she didn't know when or if Daniel would ever accept this relationship, and the longer she waited to confront him, the worse his reaction would likely be. "Soon," she promised. "I'll talk to him soon. I just need—" A noise from the main hallway made them both freeze, footsteps approaching. Without thinking, Nathaniel backed Emma further into the alcove, his body covering hers protectively. They held their breath as someone walked past, their shadows visible but their faces hidden in darkness. The footsteps faded, but neither of them moved. "Emma," Nathaniel breathed, his lips now hovering just above hers. "Tell me to stop. Tell me to walk away right now." "I can't." Emma's hands tightened in his hair, pulling him closer. "I don't want you to stop." Whatever restraint Nathaniel had been holding on to snapped. He kissed her like a man drowning, his mouth claiming hers with desperate intensity. Emma responded with equal hunger, years of loneliness and heartbreak melting away under the heat of his kiss. This wasn't like the tender kiss they'd shared in his bed. This was raw and consuming, fueled by weeks of stolen glances and denied desire. Nathaniel's hands roamed her back, her sides memorizing every curve through the fabric of her dress. Emma pressed closer, needing more, needing everything. When they finally broke apart, both were gasping for air. Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers, his hand still holding her like he couldn't bear to let go. "I love you," he said again, the words fierce and absolute. "I love you so much, it terrifies me. You've become everything, Emma. Everything. I love you too." Emma cupped his face, her thumb stroking his cheekbones. "And you're right. We need to stop hiding. I'll talk to Daniel this week, I promise." "Emma, there you are," a voice called from the hallway, cheerful and oblivious. They sprang apart just as Rachel rounded the corner, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. Emma's swollen lips, Nathaniel's disheveled hair, the way they were both breathing hard. "Oh," Rachel said, a slow grin spreading across her face. "Oh my." "Rachel," Emma started. "Don't mind me, I was just coming to find you because Daniel was asking where you went. But I'll tell him you're in the ladies' room having a wardrobe malfunction or something." She gave Nathaniel an appraising look. "Take care of her, Mr. Cross. She deserves the best." "I intend to," Nathaniel said, his voice still rough with emotion. Rachel winked at Emma and disappeared back toward the ballroom. Emma let out a shaky laugh, reality crashing back in. "I should go back," she said reluctantly. "I know." Nathaniel straightened his tie, trying to compose himself, but his eyes never left her face. "Emma?" "Yes?" "After you talk to Daniel, after everything is out in the open, I want you to move in with me." Emma's heart stopped. "What?" "I know it's fast. I know we've only been together for a couple months. But I can't stand being apart from you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want—" He paused, vulnerability flickering across his features. "I want a life with you, a real life, not just stolen moments in shadows." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Nathaniel, you don't have to answer now. Just think about it." He pressed one more soft kiss to her lips. "I love you. Don't forget that, no matter what happens next." As Emma walked back to the ballroom on shaking legs, she knew everything was about to change. She'd tell Daniel the truth, face his anger and disappointment, risk the relationship that had sustained her through the worst moments of her life, because Nathaniel was right. What they had was worth fighting for. She just hoped her brother would eventually understand. The week after the benefit, Emma finally gathered the courage to have the conversation with Daniel. It went as badly as she'd feared, shouting, accusations, her brother's face red with anger and betrayal. He'd stormed out of her apartment, telling her she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Emma had called Nathaniel in tears, and he'd been at her door within 20 minutes, holding her while she cried, whispering promises that everything would be okay. Now, 2 weeks later, Daniel still wasn't speaking to her. The silence was agony, but Emma refused to give up Nathaniel. Not when what they had was the most real thing she'd ever experienced. "Stop thinking about it," Nathaniel said from across his kitchen, where he was preparing dinner with practiced ease. "I can see the wheels turning in your head." Emma sat at the counter, watching him work, trying not to spiral into guilt and worry. She'd been spending most evenings at his apartment, slowly bringing over clothes and toiletries, until the question of moving in felt less like a proposal and more like an inevitability. "I can't help it. He's my brother." "I know." Nathaniel set down the knife he'd been using and came around the counter, turning her stool so she faced him. His hands rested on her thighs, warm and grounding. "And he'll come around eventually. He loves you too much to stay angry forever. You don't know that. I do. Because if you were my sister, I'd be protective too. Hell, I'd probably hate any man who tried to date you." A small smile tugged at his lips. "But I'd also want you to be happy." "And you are happy, aren't you?" Emma looked into his eyes, those dark, intense eyes that saw through every defense she'd ever built, and felt her chest tighten with emotion. "I've never been happier," she admitted softly. "Even with everything that's happened with Daniel, even with the stress and the uncertainty, when I'm with you, nothing else matters." Nathaniel's expression softened. He leaned in and kissed her, slow and deep, until Emma forgot what they'd been talking about. When he pulled back, his thumb traced her lower lip. "Stay tonight," he said. "Actually, stay tomorrow night too. And the night after that. Hell, just stay, Emma. Stop going back to your empty apartment. Be here with me." "Is that your way of asking me to move in?" "I already asked you that weeks ago. This is me begging." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm tired of sleeping alone when I could be holding you. I'm tired of waking up and reaching for you only to remember you're not there. I want you here, Emma, always." Emma's heart raced. This was happening so fast, breaking every rule about taking relationships slow and being cautious. But when had caution ever made her feel this alive? "Okay," she whispered. Nathaniel pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Okay? Okay, I'll move in with you." Emma laughed at the shock on his face. "Did you think I'd say no?" "Honestly, I was preparing for an argument about it being too soon." Nathaniel lifted her off the stool and spun her around, making her squeal with surprise and laughter. When he set her down, his smile was blinding. "You're really going to live with me? Unless you're having second thoughts." "Never." He kissed her again, harder this time, his hands sliding into her hair. "God, Emma, I love you so much." They ate dinner on the couch, Emma's feet in Nathaniel's lap, while they watched a movie neither paid attention to. They talked about logistics, when she'd move her things, how they'd combine their lives, what it would mean for both of them. "What if we're terrible at living together?" Emma asked as the credits rolled. "What if you have annoying habits I can't stand?" Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "I don't know. Maybe you leave wet towels on the bathroom floor, or you're grumpy in the mornings before coffee." "I am absolutely grumpy in the mornings before coffee," Nathaniel admitted with a grin. "But you already know that. You've stayed over enough times to experience my pre-coffee mood." "True, and you've seen me without makeup, which is basically the relationship equivalent of getting naked." The moment the words left her mouth, Emma felt the air in the room shift. Nathaniel's eyes darkened, his hand on her ankle tightening almost imperceptibly. "Speaking of which," he said, his voice dropping to that rough timbre that made her stomach flip, "we should probably talk about expectations, about what moving in together means for us." Emma's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "I mean—" Nathaniel seemed to struggle with the words, a rare moment of uncertainty crossing his features. "I don't want you to feel pressured about anything. You moving in doesn't have to mean we don't have to—" He stopped, frustrated. "I'm making a mess of this." Emma realized with a rush of tenderness what he was trying to say. He was giving her an out, making sure she knew that living together didn't come with expectations about physical intimacy. "Nathaniel," she said softly, shifting so she could face him fully, "I love you, and I want to be with you. Completely." His breath caught. "Emma?" I'm not saying it has to be tonight, but I'm saying that I'm ready. When you are. When it feels right. She reached up to cup his face. I trust you. More than I've ever trusted anyone. Nathaniel closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. When he opened them again, the vulnerability there made Emma's heart ache. I want to be with you too, he said hoarsely. I've wanted it for so long, but I need you to know. This isn't just physical for me. It's never been just physical with you. I know. When we take that step, it means everything to me. You mean everything to me. Emma felt tears prick her eyes at the raw honesty in his voice. You mean everything to me too. They sat like that for a long moment, the weight of what they'd acknowledged hanging in the air between them. Then Nathaniel stood, offering her his hand. Come here, he said softly. Emma let him lead her to the bedroom, her heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. But when they got there, Nathaniel simply pulled her close, holding her against his chest. Just sleep with me tonight, he murmured into her hair. Let me hold you. Tomorrow we can figure out the rest. They changed for bed in comfortable silence, then slipped between the sheets. Emma curled into Nathaniel's side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Tell me something, she said into the darkness. Something you've never told anyone. Nathaniel was quiet for so long that Emma thought he might not answer. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes I'm terrified that I'm not capable of this, of being what you need. My whole life I've been taught that emotions are weaknesses, that vulnerability is something to be exploited. I watched my father treat my mother like a business arrangement instead of a partner, and I swore I'd never be like him. He paused, his arm tightening around her. But what if I am? What if I don't know how to love you the way you deserve? Emma's throat tightened with emotion. She shifted so she could look at him, even in the darkness. You already love me the way I deserve, she said firmly. Do you know how I know? Because you're worried about it. Because you care enough to be afraid. My father never worried about being good enough for my mother. He just assumed he was. But you question yourself. You push yourself to be better. You actually care about my feelings and my happiness. She traced his jawline with gentle fingers. That's love, Nathaniel. Real love. And you're better at it than you give yourself credit for. She felt him exhale shakily, felt some of the tension leave his body. How did I get so lucky? He asked. Finding you? We both got lucky, Emma corrected. That night when my car broke down, I thought it was the worst night of my life. Instead, it brought me to you. They kissed then, slow and tender, a promise of things to come. When they finally settled back down to sleep, Emma felt more certain than ever that she'd made the right choice. 3 nights later, everything changed. Emma had officially moved in, her things scattered throughout Nathaniel's their apartment. They'd spent the evening unpacking boxes, laughing over her extensive book collection and his surprising number of kitchen gadgets. They'd ordered takeout and eaten on the floor surrounded by half-empty boxes, planning where everything would go. After cleaning up, Nathaniel had disappeared into the bathroom for a shower while Emma finished organizing her clothes. When she wandered into the bedroom looking for him, she found him standing by the window, freshly showered, wearing only sleep pants, his hair still damp. The sight of him stole her breath, the strong lines of his back, the way the city lights cast shadows across his skin. He turned when he heard her, and the look on his face when he saw her made Emma's knees weak. Hi, she said softly, suddenly nervous. Hi. Nathaniel crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands cupping her face. You're really here, living here with me. I'm really here. Emma. His voice was rough with emotion and desire. I need you to tell me if you want me to stop. At any point. Promise me. I promise. Emma's hands came up to rest on his bare chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palms. But I don't want you to stop, Nathaniel. I want this. I want you. What followed was a revelation. Tender and intense, careful and passionate. Everything Emma had never experienced before. Nathaniel worshipped her with his touches, his kisses, his whispered words of love. He took his time, making sure she felt cherished and safe, his focus entirely on her pleasure and comfort. When they finally came together, Emma felt something shift deep in her soul. This wasn't just physical. It was a complete merging, an emotional intimacy that left her trembling and tearful in the best way possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathless and overwhelmed. Nathaniel held her close, pressing kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his hand stroking her hair. Emma nodded against his chest, unable to find words for what she was feeling. Complete. That was the only word that fit. After years of feeling like something was missing, of searching for a connection that always seemed just out of reach, she'd finally found it. "I love you," she managed to say. "So much." "I love you too." Nathaniel pulled the blanket over them, cocooning them in warmth. "Thank you for trusting me, for choosing me." They fell asleep like that, Emma in Nathaniel's arms, both finally whole. Neither of them knew that in just a few days, everything would come crashing down. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, and Nathaniel's arm draped protectively across her waist. For a moment, she simply lay there, savoring the perfect peace of the morning, the warmth of his body against hers, the steady rhythm of his breathing. This was happiness, pure, uncomplicated happiness. Then her phone rang. Emma reached for it on the nightstand, careful not to wake Nathaniel. Daniel's name flashed on the screen, and her heart leapt with hope. Maybe he was finally ready to talk, to forgive, to understand. "Hello?" she answered softly, slipping out of bed and padding to the living room. "We need to talk, now." Daniel's voice was cold, controlled in a way that made Emma's stomach drop. "Daniel, Don't. Just listen." She heard papers rustling in the background. "There's a photo circulating from the Manchester deal negotiation. Someone took it at a restaurant 2 weeks ago. You and Cross having what looks like a very intimate conversation." Emma's blood ran cold. 2 weeks ago, she'd mentioned casually to Nathaniel over dinner that Daniel's company was pursuing the Manchester Industries acquisition. It had been innocent, just venting about Daniel's stress levels. But if someone had seen them together and connected the dots— "Daniel, it's not what you think." "Really?" "Because what I think is that Cross has been using you to get inside information about my business dealings, and you've been too blind to see it." "That's not true. Nathaniel wouldn't he?" Daniel's laugh was bitter. "Emma, wake up. The Manchester deal fell through yesterday. Someone leaked details of our offer to their board, and suddenly a mystery competitor swooped in with better terms. Care to guess who that competitor was?" Emma felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "No, Nathaniel wouldn't do that. He wouldn't use me like that. The evidence says otherwise." One of his senior executives was spotted meeting with Manchester's chief financial officer the day after you and Cross had dinner. "The same dinner where you were photographed looking very cozy." Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "God, Emma, I warned you. I told you he was ruthless, that he'd do anything to win, but you wouldn't listen." "You're wrong," Emma insisted, but doubt was already creeping in, cold and insidious. Had she mentioned specific details about the Manchester deal? She'd been so comfortable with Nathaniel, so open. What had she said in those private moments? "Am I?" Then explain the timeline. Explain how Cross suddenly knew exactly what to offer when we'd kept our proposal confidential. Explain how his company managed to undercut us by just enough to win without you feeding him information. Emma's hands were shaking. "I need to talk to him. There has to be an explanation." "There is an explanation. He played you, just like Marcus played you, just like every other man in your life has played you. But this time you helped him destroy my company in the process." The accusation hit like a slap. "That's not fair, isn't it? I'm facing potential legal action from my investors because of this, Emma. I could lose everything I've built, and it's because I wasn't enough. Your loyalty to me wasn't enough to keep you from falling into bed with my enemy." Emma's vision blurred with tears. "Daniel, please, I can't do this right now. I need space from you, from this whole situation." His voice broke completely. "You chose him over me, over your family. I hope he was worth it." The line went dead. Emma stood frozen in the living room, the phone clutched in her trembling hand. Her mind raced through every conversation she'd had with Nathaniel, every casual mention of her day, every complaint about Daniel's work stress. Had she inadvertently given away confidential information? Had Nathaniel been subtly pumping her for details while she thought they were just sharing their lives? No. She refused to believe it. Nathaniel loved her. He'd proven it in 1,000 ways. This was a coincidence, a misunderstanding, but doubt had taken root, and it was growing. "Emma?" She turned to find Nathaniel in the doorway, wearing the sleep pants he'd thrown on, his hair adorably mussed, concern etched across his features. "What's wrong? You're crying." Emma wiped at her face, trying to compose herself. "Daniel called. He knows about us." "Okay." Nathaniel crossed to her, reaching for her hands. "That's not ideal, but we knew this was coming. We'll deal with it together. He says you used me." The words came out flat, emotionless. "That you got information from me about the Manchester deal and used it to sabotage his company." Nathaniel froze. "What?" "There's a photo of us at dinner 2 weeks ago. The night I told you about Daniel's stress over the Manchester acquisition." Emma's voice was shaking now. "Daniel lost the deal yesterday. To you, and he thinks I helped you do it." "Emma, that's insane. I would never—" "Did you win the Manchester deal?" Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "Yes, but not because of anything you told me. My team has been working on that acquisition for months. We put together a solid proposal that beat your brothers on merit." "Months? You never mentioned you were competing for the same deal." "Because I was trying to keep business separate from us. I didn't want you to feel caught in the middle." Emma pulled her hands away, hugging herself. "How convenient. You just happened to win a deal I casually mentioned at dinner. And your executive just happened to meet with their CFO right after we talked. That's one hell of a coincidence, Nathaniel." "It is a coincidence." Nathaniel's voice rose in frustration. "Emma, you have to believe me. I love you. I would never use you like that. Everything between us has been real." "Has it?" The words felt like poison leaving her mouth, but she couldn't stop them. "Or was I just a useful source of information? A way to get close to your competitor?" "Don't do this." Nathaniel reached for her again, but Emma stepped back. "Don't let your brother's paranoia destroy what we have." "My brother's paranoia? He's facing potential lawsuits because of this. He could lose his company." "That's not my fault, and it's certainly not yours." Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. "Emma, please. You know me. You know I wouldn't betray you like this." But did she? Emma thought she'd known Marcus too. Thought she'd known her ex before him. And both times, she'd been blindsided by their betrayal. What made Nathaniel different? What made her think she could trust her judgment this time? "I need space," Emma heard herself say. "I need to think." "Space?" Nathaniel looked stricken. "Emma, no, we need to talk about this. We need to work through it together." "I can't." Emma's chest felt like it was caving in. "I just moved in with you. I let myself believe—" Her voice broke. "I need to go." She turned toward the bedroom, needing to grab her things, needing to escape before she completely fell apart. Nathaniel followed, his presence overwhelming in the small space. "Emma, please don't do this. Don't walk away from us without giving me a chance to prove—" "Prove what?" Emma spun to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "The evidence is pretty damning, Nathaniel. What can you possibly say that will make this okay? The truth, I can tell you the truth. I don't know if I can believe you anymore." The admission tore from her throat like a wound. "I don't know if I can trust my own judgment. I've been wrong before. So many times before." Emma grabbed her overnight bag and started throwing clothes into it, her movements jerky and desperate. Nathaniel watched helplessly, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "If you leave like this," he said, his voice breaking, "if you don't even give me a chance to show you the truth, Emma, please, don't do this over the phone. Don't run from me." But Emma was already past hearing. The pain was too sharp, the betrayal too fresh. She zipped her bag and headed for the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered, unable to look at him. Then she left, her heart shattering with every step. 2 days felt like an eternity in hell. Emma had returned to her apartment, the one she'd barely been staying in for weeks, and existed in a fog of grief and confusion. Rachel had come over with wine and tissues, holding Emma while she cried, not judging, just being present. "Maybe you should hear him out," Rachel had suggested gently, "before you make any final decisions." But Emma had blocked Nathaniel's number, couldn't bear to hear his voice, couldn't trust herself not to cave if he tried to explain. Her phone was off, disconnected from the world because she couldn't handle any more pain. The knock on her door came as the sun was setting on the second day. Emma ignored it at first, assuming it was Rachel checking on her again. But the knocking continued, forceful and insistent, and then she heard his voice. "Emma, I know you're in there. Open the door." Nathaniel. Emma's heart lurched. She should ignore him, should let him leave so she could continue nursing her wounds in private. But something in his voice, desperation mixed with anger, made her feet carry her to the door. When she opened it, the sight of him stole her breath. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual put-together appearance was completely gone. He wore jeans and a wrinkled shirt, and he was holding a manila envelope that looked like it had been gripped too hard. "You blocked my number," he said, and the hurt in his voice was palpable. "You walked out and didn't give me a chance to defend myself. Do you have any idea what these past 2 days have been like for me?" "Nathaniel, no. You don't get to talk yet. You don't get to shut me out and then act like I'm the one who betrayed you." His eyes were blazing, but beneath the anger Emma saw pain that mirrored her own. "You accused me of using you, of lying to you, and then you didn't even have the courage to look me in the face when you ended it. You just ran." Emma flinched. "I couldn't what? Couldn't trust me? Couldn't give me the benefit of the doubt? After everything we've shared, everything I've given you, you believed your brother's accusations without question." "He had evidence," Emma's voice broke. "The photo, the timing, the meeting between your executive and Manchester's CFO, evidence that was completely circumstantial and easily explained if you'd bothered to listen." Nathaniel stepped into her apartment, forcing her to back up. He threw the envelope on her coffee table. "But you didn't listen, you just assumed the worst and walked away." "I was scared," Emma shouted, tears streaming down her face. "I was terrified that you'd been lying to me, that I'd been stupid enough to fall for another man who didn't actually love me." "I do love you," Nathaniel's voice cracked. "I love you so much, it's destroying me. And the fact that you don't believe that you can't trust me." He stopped, taking a shuddering breath. "Open the envelope, Emma." "What?" "Open it. Look at what's inside, and then you can decide whether you want to keep believing I betrayed you." With shaking hands, Emma picked up the envelope and pulled out its contents. Documents, dozens of them, all stamped with official dates and signatures. "Those are internal strategy memos from my company," Nathaniel said, his voice flat now, emotionless. "Dated 6 months ago, 6 months before I even met you. They outline our entire plan for the Manchester acquisition, the research we'd done, the proposal we were building, the timeline for approaching their board." Emma's eyes scanned the papers, seeing dates that confirmed his story. "And this," Nathaniel pulled out another document, "is a confidentiality agreement I signed with my senior leadership. It explicitly states that the Manchester deal was never to be discussed with anyone outside the core team. Not partners, not friends, not girlfriends. Nothing you told me ever left my lips, Emma. Not one word. But your executive met with their CFO on a completely unrelated matter. That executive, James Patterson, is married to Manchester's CFO's sister. They have Sunday dinners together. The meeting Daniel's investigator spotted was James picking up his wife from her sister's office." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. If Daniel had bothered to do actual research instead of jumping to conclusions, he would have known that. Emma felt the room spinning, but the timing was a coincidence. A terrible, unfortunate coincidence. Nathaniel pulled out more papers, emails, meeting notes, project timelines. "Everything is here, Emma, complete documentation, showing that my company won the Manchester deal fairly, with no insider information, no manipulation, nothing." Emma sank onto her couch, the papers spilling across her lap. She felt like she couldn't breathe. "There's more," Nathaniel continued, and now his voice held a bitter edge. "That photo of us, it wasn't coincidence that it surfaced right when the Manchester deal was decided. A third company, Meridian Corp, was also competing for the acquisition. They're the ones who leaked the photo to Daniel, along with some carefully crafted insinuations. They were trying to eliminate both of us from the competition by making it look like we were colluding." He tossed another document onto the pile, an email thread showing Meridian's strategy. "My business partner figured it out yesterday. We have proof that Meridian manipulated the whole situation, fed information to Daniel's team to make me look guilty, And it worked perfectly because Daniel was already predisposed to think the worst of me. Emma looked up at Nathaniel, horror washing over her. "Oh my God." "Yeah." Nathaniel's laugh was hollow. "So congratulations, Emma. You helped destroy exactly what Meridian wanted destroyed. Our relationship. And you did it without even giving me a chance to defend myself." "Nathaniel, Emma struggled to find words. "I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have listened." "Yes, you should have." He stared down at her, and the pain in his eyes was almost unbearable. "Do you know what the worst part is? It's not that you believed I could use you. It's that you couldn't trust yourself enough to believe that what we had was real. After everything, after I opened up to you about my fears, after I told you things I've never told anyone, after I made myself vulnerable in ways that terrified me, you still thought I was capable of that kind of betrayal." "I was scared," Emma whispered. "Everyone I've ever trusted has hurt me." "I'm not everyone else." Nathaniel's voice rose again. "I'm the man who fell in love with you the night I found you stranded on that street. I'm the man who learned to cook your favorite meals because I wanted to see you smile. I'm the man who told you I loved you, and meant it with every fiber of my being. And you threw that away because you couldn't trust that I was different." Emma was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're right. About everything. I should have trusted you. I should have..." "Should have what? Believed in us? Believed in me?" Nathaniel crouched down in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Emma, I need you to understand something. I can forgive you for doubting me in a moment of panic. I can even forgive you for running scared. But I need to know that if we're going to be together, if we're going to build a life together, you'll trust me. Really trust me. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. When things look bad and your instinct is to run, I need to know you'll stay and fight for us instead." "I will," Emma said desperately, reaching for his hands. "I promise. I'll trust you. I'll fight for us. Please, Nathaniel. Please forgive me. Please don't give up on us." Nathaniel stared at her for a long moment, and Emma could see him warring with himself. Part of him wanted to walk away, to protect himself from ever being hurt like this again. But another part, the part that loved her, couldn't let go. "I'm terrified," he admitted, his voice breaking. "Terrified that you'll do this again, that the next time something goes wrong, you'll assume the worst and leave me." "I won't. I swear I won't." Emma cupped his face, her tears falling on his hands. "I love you, Nathaniel. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone, and I'm so sorry I hurt you. I'm so sorry I didn't trust you when I should have. But I'm here now, and I'm not running. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us." Nathaniel closed his eyes, and Emma saw a tear slip down his cheek. "You broke my heart, Emma." "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." When Nathaniel opened his eyes again, they were still full of pain, but there was something else too, hope. Fragile and tentative, but there. "I can't lose you," he said roughly. "These past 2 days have been the worst of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except how much I missed you. You won't lose me. Never again." Emma pressed her forehead to his. "I'm yours, Nathaniel. Completely. And I trust you. I trust us." He pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. They stayed like that for a long time, both crying, both healing, both choosing to fight for what they had, instead of letting fear win. When they finally pulled apart, Nathaniel wiped Emma's tears with gentle fingers. "We need to talk to Daniel," he said. "Show him this evidence. Clear both our names." Emma nodded. "Together. Together," Nathaniel confirmed. "Always together from now on." They would face Daniel. They would fix what had been broken. But first they held each other, grateful for second chances, and the courage to trust in love, even when it was terrifying. The confrontation with Daniel happened 2 days later in his office. Emma and Nathaniel arrived together, united, carrying the evidence that would clear their names. Daniel's secretary tried to stop them, but Emma pushed past, Nathaniel's hand steady at the small of her back. Daniel looked up from his desk, his expression hardening when he saw them together. "I don't have anything to say to either of you," he said coldly. "Then just listen." Nathaniel stepped forward, placing the manila envelope on Daniel's desk. "Everything you need to know is in here. Documentation proving that my company's pursuit of the Manchester deal predated my relationship with Emma by 6 months. Confidentiality agreements showing I never discussed the deal with anyone outside my core team, and evidence that Meridian Corp manipulated this entire situation to eliminate both of us as competition. Daniel didn't touch the envelope. "Convenient that you have all this ready to go." "It's the truth," Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening. "Daniel, I know you're hurt. I know you feel betrayed, but Nathaniel didn't use me. He loves me, and I love him." "Love," Daniel scoffed. "You've known him for what, 3 months? And you're willing to throw away everything for him?" "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing my own happiness." "There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you chose a man you barely know over your own brother, over the family that's been there for you through everything." The words hit their mark. Emma felt Nathaniel tense beside her, felt his anger rising on her behalf, but she squeezed his hand, silently asking him to let her handle this. "You're right," Emma said quietly. "You've been there for me through everything. After Mum and Dad died, after Marcus, after every heartbreak and disappointment. You've been my rock, and I love you more than I can say. But Daniel," her voice broke slightly, "you can't protect me from life. You can't control who I fall in love with or decide what risks are worth taking. I can, when the risk involves a man who spent 3 years trying to destroy my company." "Competing isn't destroying," Nathaniel interjected, unable to stay silent. "We're in the same industry, Harrison. Of course we're going to vie for the same clients and deals. That's business, not personal vendetta. It became personal when you started dating my sister." "No." Nathaniel's voice was firm. "It was never about business with Emma. Not once. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I'll be damned if I let you destroy that because of your ego." Daniel stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "My ego? You arrogant son of a—" "Stop it!" Emma moved between them, her hands raised. "Both of you, just stop. This is exactly what Meridian wanted, for us to tear each other apart while they swooped in and won. They played us all, and we fell for it." Daniel's jaw clenched, but some of the fire left his eyes. "Even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that you lied to me, Emma. You snuck around behind my back for months, because I knew you'd react exactly like this." Emma's voice was thick with emotion. "I knew you wouldn't give him a fair chance, wouldn't see past your rivalry to the man he actually is. And I was right, wasn't I? The moment you found out about us, you assumed the worst without even talking to me first." The truth of that hung in the air between them. Daniel looked away, something flickering across his face, guilt perhaps, or realization. "Just look at the evidence," Emma pleaded. "Read it with an open mind. If you still think Nathaniel betrayed us after that, then I'll—" She faltered, the words catching in her throat. "Then I'll respect your decision, even if it means losing you." The admission cost her everything. Emma felt Nathaniel's hand tighten around hers, felt his support and his pain at what she was offering to sacrifice. Daniel finally picked up the envelope, pulling out the documents. He read in silence, his expression growing more and more troubled with each page. When he finished, he sat back down heavily, his face pale. "Meridian," he said hoarsely. "They played us all." "Yes," Nathaniel confirmed. "And you really did develop your Manchester strategy months before meeting Emma?" "Yes." Daniel looked at his sister, and Emma saw genuine anguish in his eyes. "Emma, I'm sorry. I should have listened, should have trusted your judgment instead of—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "God, I've been an idiot." "You were protecting me," Emma said softly. "I understand that, even if I don't agree with how you did it." "No," Daniel shook his head. "I was being controlling and paranoid. You're a grown woman, and you have every right to make your own choices, even when those choices terrify me." The admission was huge coming from Daniel. Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks, but before anyone could respond, Nathaniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went completely still. "What is it?" Emma asked. "Manchester just sent out a press release." Nathaniel's voice was tight. "They're reconsidering all proposals after the controversy, giving everyone another chance to submit." Daniel's eyes widened. "That means another competition between our companies." Nathaniel looked at Daniel, then at Emma. "One more chance to win the deal." Emma felt her stomach drop. This could reignite everything, The rivalry, the suspicion, the tension that had almost destroyed them all. Then Nathaniel did something that shocked everyone. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "James, I need you to draft a public statement. We're withdrawing from the Manchester acquisition." He paused, listening to his partner's protests. "I don't care about the financial implications. Do it. Effective immediately." "What are you doing?" Emma gasped. Nathaniel ended the call and looked at her with absolute certainty. "I'm making a choice. Manchester was a good deal, but it's not worth losing you over. It's not worth causing more pain to your family or giving anyone more ammunition to question my intentions." He turned to Daniel. "Consider this my proof. I choose your sister over any business deal. Every time." The office was silent. Daniel stared at Nathaniel, like he was seeing him for the first time. "That deal was worth millions," Daniel said slowly. "You built your entire year's strategy around it. And Emma is worth more than all of it combined." Nathaniel's voice was fierce. "I spent too many years believing that business success was all that mattered, that achievements defined my worth. But Emma taught me there's something more valuable than any deal. Having someone to come home to. Having love. Having a real life." Emma was crying openly now. "Nathaniel, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her protectively. "I needed to. Not to prove anything to Daniel, but to prove to myself that I've changed. That you've changed me." Daniel watched them for a long moment. Then he stood and walked around his desk. Emma tensed, unsure what to expect. Her brother extended his hand to Nathaniel. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly, "for loving my sister enough to make that sacrifice and for proving me wrong about you." Nathaniel shook his hand, and Emma saw relief flood both their faces. "Does this mean—" Emma started hopefully. "It means I'm still not thrilled about you two," Daniel said, but his lips twitched with the hint of a smile. "But I can see that he makes you happy, and that you're good for him too. So I'll try, really try, to accept this." Emma threw her arms around her brother, sobbing with relief. Daniel held her tight, murmuring apologies into her hair. When they finally pulled apart, Daniel looked at Nathaniel seriously. "Hurt her, and I'll destroy you. Business rivalry be damned." "Fair enough," Nathaniel agreed. "But I won't. She's everything to me." As they left Daniel's office, Emma felt lighter than she had in weeks. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust never was. But they would do it together, all three of them. 4 months had passed since that night when Emma's car broke down on a dark street, changing her life forever. 4 months since a chance encounter had turned into the greatest love story she'd ever known. Now, standing on the rooftop terrace of Nathaniel's building, their building, Emma looked out over the city lights and felt overwhelming gratitude for every twist and turn that had brought her here. "You're thinking too hard again," Nathaniel said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I can practically hear the wheels turning." Emma leaned back against his chest, smiling. "Just thinking about how far we've come, how different everything is now." "Better different?" "The best different." She turned in his arms to face him. "Daniel actually invited us to Sunday dinner next week, voluntarily, without me begging him." Nathaniel laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Progress. Though I think your friend Rachel deserves some credit there. She's been working on him. She has been spending a lot more time at his place," Emma mused. "And he keeps mentioning her in conversation, suspiciously often. Maybe we're not the only ones who found something unexpected." They stood like that for a moment, the cool evening air wrapping around them, the stars beginning to emerge overhead. Nathaniel seemed unusually quiet, and Emma felt a flutter of anticipation in her stomach. "Emma," he said finally, his voice serious, "I need to tell you something." Her heart stuttered. "Okay. These past 4 months with you have been the best of my life. You've taught me what it means to really live, to feel, to love without holding back." He took her hands in his thumbs stroking across her knuckles. "Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions, chasing success without understanding why. But you changed everything." "Nathaniel, let me finish." He smiled, but his eyes were suspiciously bright. "You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that opening your heart is the bravest thing you can do. You showed me what it means to be chosen, to be loved not for what I've achieved but for who I am underneath all the armor." Emma felt tears welling up, her throat tight with emotion. When I found you that night, stranded and heartbroken, I thought I was just helping someone in need. I didn't know I was meeting my future, my everything. Nathaniel released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, and Emma's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. He dropped to one knee and the world seemed to stop spinning. "Emma Harrison," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "you've made me believe in things I thought were impossible. In love that's real and deep and transformative. In futures that are about more than corporate victories. In coming home to someone who sees all of me, the broken parts and the strong parts, and loves me anyway." Tears streamed down Emma's face as Nathaniel opened the box, revealing a stunning ring that caught the starlight. "I'm asking you to choose me, every day for the rest of our lives, to build a life together that's about love and laughter and all the beautiful, messy moments in between." His own tears were falling now. "Marry me, Emma. Let me spend forever showing you how deeply you're loved, how precious you are, how my life began the moment you walked into it." Emma could barely see through her tears, but she didn't need to see to know her answer. It had been written in her heart since the moment he'd asked if she needed help on that dark street. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, laughing through her tears, "Yes, yes, I'll marry you 1,000 times, yes." Nathaniel stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. When he set her down, he cupped her face with both hands and kissed her, deep and passionate and full of promises for all the tomorrows they'd share. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing, Emma touched the ring on her finger in wonder. "I love you," she said. "More than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too." Nathaniel pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you for not giving up on us, for fighting for us even when it was terrifying." "Always," Emma promised, "for the rest of our lives." They stood on that terrace under the stars, holding each other, planning their future in whispered words and stolen kisses. And Emma knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Epilogue. 6 months after their wedding, Emma sat on the couch with her hand resting on her rounded belly, feeling their baby move beneath her palm. The apartment was filled with the golden light of late afternoon, casting everything in a warm glow that made her feel cocooned in happiness. She heard the front door open and smiled as Nathaniel's footsteps approached. "I'm home," he called out, and Emma heard him drop his briefcase by the door. Something the old Nathaniel would never have done, but this version of him, the one who'd learned what really mattered, did it without thinking. He appeared in the doorway, his tie already loosened, his smile transforming his face when he saw her. Without a word, he crossed to the couch and knelt in front of her, his hands immediately finding her belly. "How are my two favorite people?" he asked, pressing a tender kiss to her stomach. "We missed you," Emma said, running her fingers through his hair. "Baby's been active today. I think someone takes after their father's inability to sit still." Nathaniel laughed and kissed her belly again before moving up to capture her lips in a slow, sweet kiss that still made her melt even after all these months together. "I brought you something," he said, pulling a small bag from his pocket. "Strawberries. I know you've been craving them." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Pregnancy hormones made her cry at everything, but especially at the small, thoughtful gestures Nathaniel performed daily. "You're too good to me." "Impossible," he murmured, settling beside her and pulling her feet into his lap. He began massaging them with practiced ease, knowing they'd been swelling lately. "You gave me everything, Emma. A real life, a family, a reason to come home that's better than any boardroom victory." Later, as the sun set and painted their living room in shades of pink and gold, Nathaniel pulled Emma close, his hands resting protectively on her belly, where their child grew. He kissed her temple, her cheek, her lips, whispering words of love as their baby moved between them. "Thank you," he said softly, "for that night when your car broke down, for giving me a chance when you shouldn't have, for teaching me what love really means." Emma smiled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his hands gentle on her stomach, and thought about how a single moment of bad luck had led to the greatest blessing of her life. "Thank you for stopping," she whispered back, "for seeing me, for loving me." They held each other as darkness fell, a family in the making, their love story still unfolding in beautiful, unexpected ways. And Emma knew that every moment of fear, every obstacle they'd overcome had been worth it for this, for him, for them, for the life they'd built together, for forever. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.